Curious which classic dinners from the 70s deserve a comeback? Sit back as we take a look at 25 tasty meals that were once part of our nightly rituals. While a few die-hard fans still make these, they've largely fallen off mainstream menus. Time to roll back the clock. Beef stroganoff. Beef stroganoff was a dinner party staple in American homes during the 1970s. This rich dish features tender strips of beef in a creamy, sour cream sauce, typically served over egg noodles. Originally a Russian dish dating back to the 19th century, it gained massive popularity in the US during the post-war era. By the 1970s, it had evolved to include mushrooms and onions, with many home cooks using cream of mushroom soup as a convenient shortcut. The dish was commonly featured in dinner party menus and family cookbooks throughout the decade, valued for its elegant presentation and hearty flavors. What made beef stroganoff particularly appealing to 1970s families was its ability to transform affordable cuts of beef into something special, aligning perfectly with the decade's economic challenges. Home cooking magazines like Family Circle and Better Homes and Gardens regularly featured variations of the recipe, suggesting it was just as appropriate for weeknight family dinners as it was for entertaining guests. Chicken a la King. Chicken a la King features diced chicken in a rich cream sauce with mushrooms, pimientos, and sometimes peas. This American creation dates back to the early 20th century, with origins claimed by several New York hotels. By the 1970s, it had become a go-to dish for using leftover chicken, often served over toast points, rice, or puff pastry shells. The dish was particularly popular for ladies' luncheons and casual dinner parties. Its creamy texture and colorful appearance made it both satisfying and visually appealing, while the combination of convenient canned ingredients made it accessible for home cooks looking to create something that felt special without too much fuss. During the 1970s, as more women entered the workforce, dishes like chicken a la King provided a solution for busy mothers looking to create memorable meals with limited time. Recipe cards from the era often provided made-ahead instructions, allowing the sauce to be prepared on the weekend and reheated for a quick weeknight dinner, making it particularly valuable for budget-conscious families. Fondue parties were all the rage in the 1970s, with the communal pot of melted cheese becoming the centerpiece of social gatherings. This Swiss dish gained tremendous popularity in American homes during this decade, with many newlyweds receiving fondue sets as wedding gifts. The traditional preparation involves melting Gruyere and Emmental cheeses with white wine, garlic, and a touch of Kirsch liqueur. Diners would spear cubes of bread onto long forks and dip them into the bubbling mixture. Beyond cheese, chocolate and oil fondues also became popular variations. Fondue represented the casual, interactive dining experience that defined the era's entertaining style. The 1970s love affair with fondue went beyond just the food itself. It embodied the decade's appreciation for social dining experiences that encouraged conversation and connection. Fondue parties were seen as modern and somewhat exotic, allowing suburban Americans to add European sophistication to their homes without requiring advanced cooking skills. The fondue craze reached such heights that specialized fondue restaurants opened in major cities, featuring cheese, oil, and chocolate variations. Quiche Lorraine became a symbol of sophisticated dining in 1970s America. This savory French tart consists of a flaky pastry crust filled with eggs, cream, bacon, and Swiss cheese. Initially popular in upscale restaurants, it quickly found its way into home kitchens as Americans embraced French cuisine. Women's magazines of the era regularly featured quiche recipes, positioning it as the perfect dish for brunches and light dinners. Its popularity continued until the early 1980s, when the publication of Real Men Don't Eat Quiche humorously suggested it wasn't masculine enough, ironically marking its cultural significance during the previous decade. What made quiche particularly appealing to American home cooks of the 1970s was its versatility and relatively simple preparation. despite its fancy French name. Homemakers could prepare it in advance, serve it at room temperature, and customize it with vegetables or different cheeses depending on what was available. The dish became a fixture not only at dinner parties, but also at the emerging trend of weekend brunches, where friends would gather for mimosas and slices of quiche served with simple green salads. Swedish meatballs. Swedish meatballs gained immense popularity in American homes during the 1970s, partly due to the increasing influence of international cuisines. These small, tender meatballs made with ground beef and pork, seasoned with nutmeg and allspice, and served in a rich cream gravy, became a cocktail party essential. Typically served with lingonberry jam, they offered an accessible taste of Scandinavian cooking. The dish was often presented in electric chafing dishes at gatherings or as a family meal served over egg noodles. Their popularity was so widespread that they became a staple in frozen dinners and were featured in nearly every community cookbook published during the decade. The 1970s fascination with Swedish meatballs coincided with Americans' growing interest in international travel and cuisine, as affordable overseas flights became more accessible to middle-class families for the first time. This culinary curiosity, combined with smart marketing from companies like Stouffer's and Swanson, who included Swedish meatballs in their frozen dinner lines, helped cement the dish in America's collective food memory. Home cooks took pride in mastering their own versions, often adjusting the traditional recipes to accommodate American taste preferences and ingredient availability. Many families had their secret ingredient, perhaps a dash of Worcestershire sauce or a specific proportion of beef to pork. This personalization made Swedish meatballs a dish that bridged the gap between exotic foreign cuisine and comforting family tradition, allowing hosts to impress guests with something that felt simultaneously cosmopolitan and approachable during an era when Americans were increasingly looking beyond their borders for culinary inspiration. Salisbury steak. Salisbury steak was a quintessential 1970s family dinner featuring ground beef patties smothered in rich brown gravy with mushrooms and onions. Despite its fancy-sounding name, it was actually an economical meal that stretched ground beef to feed a family. Created by Dr. J.H. Salisbury in the late 19th century as part of his meat-centered diet plan, by the 1970s it had become a TV dinner staple and regular home-cooked meal. The dish typically came with sides of mashed potatoes and green peas, making a complete meal that represented the meat and potatoes American dining tradition. Its status as comfort food made it especially popular during the economic challenges of the decade. The 1970s saw Salisbury steak evolve from its basic origins to include various regional adaptations. Southern versions often added a touch of bell pepper to the gravy, while Midwestern variations might incorporate a small amount of oatmeal into the patties for extra tenderness. The dish's practicality extended beyond its economical ingredients. It was also considered an ideal meal for novice cooks to prepare, often appearing in first cookbook collections. Chicken divan. Chicken divan is a comforting casserole featuring chicken and broccoli, smothered in a creamy cheese sauce, baked to golden perfection. It originated in the early 20th century at the Divan Parisian restaurant in New York City, named for the place that created it. Initially designed as a showcase of the chef's skills in French cooking, chicken divan made its mark in the mid-20th century as a dish that blended sophistication with simplicity. During the 1970s, it became a popular way to use leftover chicken, with many home cooks adapting the recipe using convenience products like canned soup. The dish represented the era's love for creamy casseroles that could be prepared ahead and feed the whole family. The adaptability of chicken divan made it particularly appealing during the energy crisis of the 1970s, as it could be baked alongside other dishes to efficiently use oven space and reduce energy consumption, a common concern during the decade's fuel shortages. Home economists writing for magazines like Good Housekeeping often promoted casseroles like chicken divan for their one-dish efficiency. The dish also bridged the gap between generations. Older cooks appreciated its roots in classical cuisine, while younger homemakers embraced the simplified versions using cream of chicken soup. Many families made it on Sunday using leftover roast chicken, creating a weekly tradition that signaled the beginning of a new week. School cookbooks and church fundraising collections invariably included at least one version of chicken divan, often with personal touches like water chestnuts for extra crunch or a sprinkle of sliced almonds on top, showing how deeply embedded this dish had become in American family cooking by the mid-1970s. Stuffed bell peppers. Stuffed bell peppers were a 1970s dinner staple, featuring bell peppers filled with a mixture of ground beef, rice, tomato sauce, and cheese. This economical and colorful dish allowed home cooks to stretch ground beef while creating a meal that looked impressive. The standard preparation involved parboiling peppers, stuffing them with the meat mixture, and baking until tender. During the 1970s, variations emerged incorporating convenience products like instant rice and canned tomato soup. These stuffed peppers featured regularly in women's magazines of the era as a way to add vegetables to family meals in a format that even picky eaters would enjoy. Typically served with additional tomato sauce, they made for a complete one-dish meal. The visual appeal of stuffed peppers, their vibrant colors and neat presentation, made them ideal for the growing trend of casual dinner parties during the 1970s. Home cooks often took pride in creating eye-catching arrangements using a mix of green, red, and yellow peppers at a time when colorful food presentation was gaining appreciation beyond fine dining. Tuna noodle casserole. Tuna noodle casserole was a budget-friendly staple in 1970s households across America. This humble yet satisfying dish combines egg noodles, canned tuna, and cream of mushroom soup, topped with crushed potato chips or breadcrumbs. Originally gaining popularity during the Depression and World War II due to meat rationing, it remained a go-to weeknight dinner throughout the 1970s. The dish represented the era's reliance on convenient pantry ingredients and one-dish meals that could feed an entire family economically. Many recipe cards from the period show variations with added peas, cheese, or pimientos for extra flavor and color. While often mocked today as emblematic of dated American cooking, it provided reliable comfort in many homes during a decade marked by economic uncertainty. The 1970s versions of tuna casserole reflected the era's growing nutritional awareness, with many recipes suggesting whole wheat noodles or added vegetables to increase the meal's health benefits. Campbell's Soup Company actively promoted the dish in their advertising campaigns, positioning it as a solution for busy mothers juggling work and family responsibilities. If you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, consider supporting us on Patreon. Your membership helps us uncover more forgotten classics and bring them back to life. The link is in the description below, where you'll also find exclusive content about additional recipes and cooking techniques from the era that we couldn't fit into this video. Now let's continue our delicious journey through the 1970s. Ham steak with pineapple. Ham steak with pineapple offers a delightful contrast of flavors, featuring a grilled ham steak topped with a juicy pineapple ring. This simple yet appealing dish first gained popularity in the United States during the mid-20th century, becoming a go-to for easy, satisfying dinners throughout the 1970s. The process involves grilling or pan-frying the ham steak until nicely browned, then crowning it with a pineapple ring and occasionally a maraschino cherry for a festive touch. The sweet and savory combination was particularly appealing as Americans embraced tropical flavors, often accompanied by sides like scalloped potatoes or green beans. Ham steak with pineapple made for a well-rounded, hearty meal that represented the era's love for combining convenience with a touch of whimsy. The 1970s marked the height of America's tiki culture fascination, which influenced home cooking with Polynesian-inspired flavors and presentations. Ham with pineapple perfectly embodied this trend, bringing a touch of perceived exoticism to middle-class dinner tables. Many home cooks enhance the dish with a brown sugar glaze or a splash of rum, creating a caramelized finish. Chicken cordon bleu. Chicken cordon bleu is a sumptuous dish composed of breaded chicken breasts stuffed with ham and cheese. Its name, cordon bleu, which translates to blue ribbon from French, hints at its esteemed origins. Thought to have started in Switzerland around the mid-20th century, it soon won over American palates. The method involves flattening chicken breasts, layering them with ham and Swiss cheese, rolling them up, covering them in breadcrumbs, and then frying or baking until beautifully golden. The popularity of chicken cordon bleu in the United States was significantly driven by the rise of gourmet frozen meals in the 1970s, where it became a favorite for its ability to retain taste and texture even after freezing and reheating. Often featured at formal dinners or special occasions in the 70s, it was prized for its crisp outer shell, encasing a lusciously gooey and savory center. During the 1970s, chicken cordon bleu represented the perfect compromise between sophisticated European cuisine and American practicality. It was impressive enough to serve to guests, but straightforward enough for home cooks to master. The dish frequently appeared on dinner party menus alongside rice pilaf and asparagus, creating a color palette on the plate that was considered elegant by the standards of the time. Women's magazines offered numerous variations to keep the concept fresh. Some used different cheeses like Gruyere or mozzarella, while others substituted prosciutto for the ham. As more women entered the workforce during the decade, partially prepared versions began appearing in supermarket meat departments, allowing busy professionals to serve a seemingly complex dish with minimal weeknight effort. The satisfying moment when the knife first cuts through the crisp exterior, releasing the melted cheese, became one of the theatrical dining experiences that characterized special occasion meals of the era, providing not just nutrition, but entertainment at the family table. Steak Diane. Steak Diane is an iconic dish featuring tender beef steak, smothered in a delectable cognac sauce, often flambéed right at the table for a touch of dining drama. Originating in mid-20th century America, this dish is named after Diana, the Roman goddess of the hunt. Its preparation includes pan-frying beef tenderloin and concocting a sauce from the pan juices, cognac, butter, mustard, and Worcestershire sauce. Adding a flambé enhances the rich flavors of the sauce dramatically. Steak Diane's allure was heightened by its theatrical preparation, often becoming the centerpiece of dining experiences in fine New York City restaurants such as the Drake and the Sherry Netherland, where celebrities frequently dined. Thought to have debuted in the 1950s in New York City, it quickly became a cornerstone of high-end dining through the 1970s. It was often served with mashed potatoes or vegetables, embodying the elegance of mid-century dining. The 1970s witnessed Steak Diane's transition from exclusive restaurant fare to ambitious home cooking, as Americans increasingly sought to recreate fine dining experiences in their own kitchens. Duck à l'orange. Duck à l'orange is a venerable French dish that pairs roasted duck breast with a vibrant, tangy orange sauce. Its rich history dates back to the 19th century, enjoying popularity among French aristocrats. The duck is typically roasted to achieve a crispy exterior, while the sauce is crafted from a reduction of orange juice, stock, and a hint of Grand Marnier or Cointreau. By the 1970s, this dish had become a hallmark of sophisticated home dining, frequently chosen for elegant dinner parties or special occasions. The delightful contrast between the rich, savory duck and the fresh, citrusy sauce creates an unforgettable flavor profile that showcases the dish's aristocratic French origin. The meticulous preparation and exquisite presentation made duck à l'orange a true culinary masterpiece that symbolized the growing American interest in international gourmet cooking during the decade. For 1970s, home cooks preparing duck à l'orange represented a culinary achievement worth boasting about, a dish that required planning, technique, and timing to execute properly. Julia Child's detailed demonstration of the dish on her PBS show, The French Chef, gave Americans the confidence to attempt this restaurant-quality meal at home. Waldorf salad. Waldorf salad was a refreshing side dish that found its place on many 1970s dinner tables. Created in the late 1890s at New York's Waldorf Astoria Hotel, this salad combines crisp apples, celery, walnuts, and grapes in a mayonnaise dressing. During the 1970s, it became a staple at dinner parties and holiday meals, often served on a bed of lettuce as an elegant first course. The dish represented the era's fascination with classic American cuisine given a fresh interpretation. Variations emerged during this period, with some recipes adding miniature marshmallows or substituting yogurt for some of the mayonnaise to create a lighter version. The contrasting textures and sweet-savory flavor profile made Waldorf salad particularly popular during a decade that embraced both tradition and innovation in home cooking. The 1970s saw Waldorf salad evolve beyond its hotel restaurant origins to become a fixture at ladies' luncheons and bridge club gatherings, where its elegant presentation in individual lettuce cups signaled attention to detail and culinary refinement. Magazine features of the era often suggested serving it in hollowed apple shells or avocado halves for special occasions, adding to the visual appeal that made food presentation increasingly important in home entertaining. Department stores like Macy's and Marshall Field's featured the salad in their tea room menus, further cementing its association with sophisticated casual dining. For many middle-class Americans, the inclusion of walnuts, still considered somewhat premium ingredients, elevated Waldorf salad from everyday fare to something special. The dish's balance of sweet and savory elements, crunchy and creamy textures, made it universally appealing across generations, appearing at both grandmothers' bridge luncheons and younger couples' dinner parties throughout the decade. The preparation required minimal cooking, making it ideal for summer entertaining while still carrying the cachet of the legendary hotel where it originated, lending even modest gatherings a touch of New York sophistication. Veal Oscar. Veal Oscar is a decadent dish featuring breaded veal cutlets topped with crab meat, asparagus, and hollandaise sauce. Named after King Oscar II of Sweden, who was known for his love of fine dining, it was created in the late 19th century. The traditional preparation involves breading and frying veal cutlets, then topping them with sautéed crab meat and steamed asparagus. The dish is finished with a rich and creamy hollandaise sauce, creating a luxurious and indulgent meal. Veal Oscar was particularly popular in high-end restaurants during the 1970s, representing the era's love for lavish continental cuisine. Its elegant presentation and combination of premium ingredients made it a special occasion dish that symbolized fine dining at its most extravagant, perfectly aligned with the decade's appreciation for classical European culinary traditions. The 1970s represented the golden age of tableside service in American restaurants, and Veal Oscar frequently starred in these theatrical dining experiences, with the final assembly and sauce application performed dramatically before diners' eyes. The dish exemplified the surf and turf concept that captivated American diners during this period. Sole meunière. Sole meunière is a delicate and refined French classic consisting of tender fish fillets lightly dredged in flour, sautéed in butter, and spritzed with lemon. The dish gets its name, meunière, from the traditional French technique used in its preparation. It first captured hearts in France early in the 20th century, where it quickly became a fixture in upscale dining. Julia Child's profound endorsement of sole meunière after experiencing it as her first memorable meal at La Couronne restaurant in 1948 catapulted the dish to international fame and sparked her lifelong passion for French cuisine. During the 1970s, as Americans embraced French cooking techniques through Julia Child's television programs and cookbooks, sole meunière became a popular choice for home cooks looking to create an elegant yet simple dinner. The dish's light, refreshing qualities perfectly showcased the delicate flavors of the fish, The 1970s health consciousness movement, which began to question America's meat-heavy diet, helped propel sole meunière to popularity as consumers sought lighter protein options. The dish's relative simplicity, requiring just a few quality ingredients, aligned with the decade's nascent interest in ingredient-focused cuisine. Chicken Kiev. Chicken Kiev packs a punch with its chicken breasts stuffed with herbed butter, all wrapped up in a crispy breadcrumb coating. The dish stirs up a bit of a debate about its roots. Some folks reckon it was whipped up by French chefs back in the early 19th century, while others swear it was crafted by a Ukrainian chef in a Moscow kitchen in the early 20th century. Regardless of its backstory, Chicken Kiev began turning heads internationally around the mid-20th century, becoming the go-to at dinner parties and special events throughout the 1970s. The traditional preparation, flatten chicken breasts, tuck in a mix of butter, garlic, and herbs, roll them up, bread them, and fry to a golden brown. When sliced, the butter inside bursts out, making a rich, flavorful sauce. By the 1960s, it had secured its spot on menus across America, often served with a side of vegetables or rice. The 1970s fascination with Chicken Kiev coincided with growing American interest in Eastern European cuisine, partly influenced by détente and increasing cultural exchange with the Soviet bloc during this period of diplomatic thawing. The dish appealed to Americans' love for dramatic food moments, the ceremonial cutting into the crisp coating to release the herb-infused butter, created a memorable dining experience that was often the highlight of the meal. Cooking magazines of the era frequently featured tips for ensuring the butter remained inside during cooking, suggesting freezing the butter mixture before stuffing or using specific rolling techniques to prevent leakage. The dish's international mystique, combined with its relatively straightforward preparation, made it perfect for ambitious home cooks looking to impress guests without requiring professional training. As the decade progressed, food processors like Cuisinart began marketing their appliances by demonstrating how they could simplify preparing dishes like Chicken Kiev, helping to mechanize American home kitchens while maintaining the allure of international gourmet cooking. The dish retained its popularity through the end of the decade, appearing on restaurant menus at all price points, and establishing itself as a classic that bridged the gap between Eastern European traditions and American tastes. Baked Alaska. Baked Alaska was the showstopper dessert of 1970s dinner parties, featuring ice cream encased in meringue and briefly baked to create a hot-cold temperature contrast that amazed guests. This dramatic dessert, dating back to the 19th century, experienced a revival during the 1970s, as hosts sought impressive finales to their dinner parties. The preparation involves placing ice cream on a sponge cake base, covering it completely with meringue, and quickly baking it at high heat or flambeing it with spirits. The insulating properties of the meringue prevent the ice cream from melting, creating a magical dessert experience. Baked Alaska represented the theatrical dining experiences that defined the decade, combining impressive technique with a flair for the dramatic that suited the era's entertaining style. The 1970s version often incorporated newfound ice cream flavors beyond vanilla, with combinations like chocolate and mint becoming particularly popular. For hosts, successfully executing a Baked Alaska carried serious bragging rights, as it required precise timing and temperature control to prevent the ice cream from melting while properly browning the meringue. Veal Marsala. Veal Marsala is an elegant Italian dish that features tender veal cutlets simmered in a rich Marsala wine sauce. Originating in Sicily, where Marsala wine has been a staple since the 18th century, this dish made a splash in Italian-American kitchens in the mid-20th century. The classic method involves lightly flouring veal cutlets, then pan-frying them in butter until beautifully browned. The magic happens when the pan is deglazed with Marsala wine, adding mushrooms and sometimes cream to create a sauce that's both sweet and savory. During the 1970s, as Italian cuisine beyond spaghetti and meatballs gained popularity in America, Veal marsala emerged as a sophisticated favorite on restaurant menus. Its rich flavor profile and relatively simple preparation made it accessible for home cooks wanting to recreate restaurant experiences, commonly served with pasta or potatoes to enhance the tender veal with its robust marsala sauce. The dish represented Americans' growing appreciation for regional Italian cooking beyond the familiar Southern Italian recipes that had dominated the American understanding of Italian food in previous decades. Coquille Saint-Jacques. Coquille Saint-Jacques is a dish that exudes elegance, featuring scallops baked in a creamy sauce and often served right in their shells. This dish's charming name, which translates to Saint James's shells, nods to St. James, the patron saint of pilgrims, and references the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. To prepare it, scallops are gently sautéed in butter, then bathed in a sauce crafted from white wine, cream, and shallots. The final touch is a sprinkle of breadcrumbs before baking until the top turns a tempting golden brown. During the 1970s, as Americans explored French cuisine beyond the basics, Coquille Saint-Jacques became a signature dish for special occasions and dinner parties. Its sophisticated presentation in scallop shells made it particularly appealing during a decade that celebrated both gourmet cooking and artistic food presentation. The dish represented the growing confidence of American home cooks in attempting authentic French recipes, supported by the increasing availability of cooking equipment and ingredients previously found only in professional kitchens. For many dinner party hosts, it became a reliable impression maker. Beef Wellington. Beef Wellington was the ultimate special occasion gourmet dish of the 1970s, featuring a beef tenderloin coated with pâté and mushroom duxelles, wrapped in puff pastry and baked until golden. Named allegedly for the Duke of Wellington, this elaborate dish represented the pinnacle of sophisticated entertaining during the decade. Preparing beef Wellington was considered the mark of a serious home cook, requiring multiple steps and careful timing to achieve a perfectly medium-rare center. The dish frequently appeared in gourmet magazines and cookbooks of the era, positioned as the centerpiece for milestone celebrations. Its combination of premium ingredients and impressive presentation made it particularly popular during the holidays. Though labor-intensive, beef Wellington epitomized the 1970s enthusiasm for ambitious cooking projects that showcased culinary skill. The dish represented the era's fascination with European cuisine and the growing American interest in developing serious culinary techniques at home. Dinner guests would often compliment hosts for days afterwards on a well-executed beef Wellington, cementing its status as the ultimate achievement in 1970s home entertaining. Turkey tetrazzini. Turkey tetrazzini is a creamy, comforting pasta dish that features turkey, mushrooms, and parmesan, all baked to a golden finish. It was crafted by chef Ernest Arbogast at the Palace Hotel as a tribute to Italian opera singer Luisa Tetrazzini. Believed to have been first made in San Francisco in the early 20th century, this dish begins by sautéing turkey and mushrooms, then melding them with a lush sauce made from butter, flour, milk, and chicken broth. The creamy mixture is then tossed with cooked spaghetti, sprinkled with Parmesan cheese, and baked until it's bubbly and golden. During the 1970s, turkey tetrazzini became especially popular as a way to repurpose Thanksgiving leftovers, featured in numerous women's magazines and family cookbooks. Its creamy texture and familiar flavors made it a comforting family meal during a decade that increasingly embraced casseroles for their convenience and ability to feed a crowd. The dish perfectly represented the practical home cooking approach that prevailed during the decade's economic challenges, transforming leftovers into a completely new meal that families looked forward to as much as the original holiday feast. Beef bourguignon. Beef bourguignon gained tremendous popularity in 1970s American homes following Julia Child's influential cookbook and television demonstrations. This classic French stew features beef slowly braised in red wine with pearl onions, mushrooms, and bacon. The The dish exemplified the era's growing interest in authentic international cooking techniques. Preparation involves marinating the beef in wine, then slowly simmering it until tender, creating rich, complex flavors. During the 1970s, serving beef bourguignon signaled a home cook's sophistication and willingness to spend time creating something truly special. Typically served with crusty bread or over-buttered noodles, it represented the movement away from convenience foods toward more authentic, culinary experiences. The dish's prominence reflected the decade's growing appreciation for the deliberate, unhurried approach to cooking that Child championed. For many Americans, beef bourguignon served as their introduction to serious French cooking, encouraging home cooks to view the kitchen as a place for creative expression rather than just meal production. The dish's rich flavors and comforting nature made it perfect for the dinner party culture that flourished during the decade. Shrimp cocktail. Shrimp cocktail was the quintessential appetizer of 1970s dinner parties and restaurant dining. This simple yet elegant starter features boiled shrimp served in a glass with tangy cocktail sauce. During the 1970s, no upscale restaurant menu was complete without this offering, and home entertainers regularly presented it as the opening course for special occasion meals. The dish's popularity stemmed from its perfect balance of luxury and accessibility. Shrimp was considered a premium ingredient, yet the preparation was straightforward enough for home cooks. The presentation in specialized cocktail glasses with the sauce in the bottom and shrimp hanging decoratively around the rim became iconic of the era. Shrimp cocktail represented the 1970s ideal of sophisticated yet unpretentious entertaining, offering a touch of luxury that didn't require advanced culinary skills. The cocktail sauce itself became a point of pride for many home cooks, who guarded their special recipes with secret ingredients like a dash of bourbon or a particular brand of chili sauce. The dish's popularity was so pervasive that specialized glassware designed specifically for serving shrimp cocktail became a common wedding gift throughout the decade. Surf and turf? Surf and turf really takes the cake for a luxury meal, merging the delights of sea and land by pairing a succulent steak with lobster. This gem debuted on the American dining scene back in the 60s, quickly becoming the crown jewel of fine dining in the 1970s. There's a bit of a toss-up about who first whipped it up, but it's usually linked to high-end steakhouses and seafood joints. The phrase surf and turf perfectly captures the essence of a lavish meal. Typically, you'd find a tender beef steak, like a filet mignon, grilled to perfection next to a beautifully broiled lobster tail, all rounded off with a side of melted butter and occasionally a decadent béarnaise sauce. In the 1970s, this dish really hit its stride, especially at celebratory events or upscale eateries, becoming a symbol of the American fascination with all-out luxury dining, where piling two premium ingredients onto one plate was the ultimate indulgence. The combination represented the decade's economic prosperity for the middle class, who could occasionally splurge on previously unattainable luxury ingredients for special celebrations. These forgotten dinners from the 1970s reveal much about the era's culinary trends, from the embrace of international cuisines to the balance between convenience and gourmet aspirations. While many have faded from regular rotation in American kitchens, they tell the story of a decade exploring new flavors while maintaining comfort and tradition. Did this journey through 1970s cuisine stir up memories of family dinners around your table? If you remember enjoying any of these classics, we'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If you enjoyed this delicious trip down memory lane, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more nostalgic journeys through the foods, fashions, and fads of decades past. Your support helps us continue bringing these forgotten classics back into the spotlight.